Happy New Year! My name is Jonathan Paula. Glad you were here with me. Sorry, we're a few weeks late on this, but I have 2 kids, 2 jobs, and other priorities. But I still want to take you on a deep dive into the 480 films I watched in 2024. So let's pop over to letterboxd.com/John Paula /stats or whatever it is, and take a look at all of my year in review stats. 480 films from last year, and we'll start there. We'll just click right on that number, and I'll show you the films. Here's the last movie I watched of the entire year, The Poseidon Adventure, a great New Year's Eve watch, one of my favorites as a kid. I rewatch it every few years or so. Harry Met Sally, another great New Year's Eve watch. And we can scroll down, and I can show you every single movie I watched all year long, and in fact, I will by the end of this video. But I want to first single out some of my favorite discoveries of the year. So I'm going to sort by highest rated first, and I'm also going to hide rewatched films. So these are the highest rated films I watched in 2024, 404 for the first time, right? Sorted by rating. And these ones at the top of the list here, these were all winners. Look at this list. Wild Robot, that was a brand new release from 2024, and I loved it. Great family-friendly adventure, high and low. Kurosawa from 1963. This was a personal a list of shame entry, if there ever was one. I think this is one of the highest rated films on Letterboxd. I think it's literally top 10, right? On Letterboxd, this is the 5th highest rated film on the entire site, and I had not seen it until 2 months ago in November of 2024. But predictably, I loved it. I also loved, also from Japan, Akira. I watched it the same week. These back-to-back Japanese classics that had evaded me for years. Brilliant film, a beautifully animated anime with some provocative visuals and ideas, and the music was great, the characters, the voice, everything was awesome. I loved this, and I need to watch more anime because I also really loved this discovery I watched in June, Your Name. This came out in 2016. I wrote a review on it if you'd like to hear more of my thoughts, but it's sort of a Freaky Friday meets time travel, lake house kind of vibe where these people switch bodies and switch feelings, and it was brilliant. It made me cry. I loved it so very much. So much, in fact, that of the 177 movies I have seen in 2016, more films than in any other year in the history of cinema, this one immediately went to my #1 spot for 2016. An older one from 37, History is Made at Night. This was great. It was romance, it was Casablanca, it was Titanic, like all these genres kind of coming together in an awesome drama, romance, epic, disaster film. Like, it is great. Check this one out. You probably haven't heard of it, let alone seen it, because it is not a popular film. It has only been seen by 7,000 people. Jean Arthur's in it, and it is just a great film. And you need to check it out. It's been slept on. Bluey the Sign was the full-length, 28-minute spin-off from the Disney Plus animated show. My family and I watched together. I wept like a baby. I cried. My kids were like, "Dad, why are you crying?" I'm like, "Because it's so beautiful." This honestly may be my favorite thing released all of 2024. Speaking of films that really made me cry and feel, Life is Beautiful. This is a brilliant film, and you probably know that. This was a very popular one that I had missed for a long time. It won a bunch of Oscars when it came out in 1997. Roberto Benigni, though, he has such a talent in this film, and such a beautiful and captivating and heartbreaking story. It gives you a new perspective on the Holocaust and those characters, and it's sort of beautiful and heartbreaking all at the same time. And the movies I rated, and those are all the movies last year I watched the first time, I gave a 10 out of 10, and there's only, 7 of them, right? Some movies I gave a 9 out of 10. Anora, that's a brand new potential Best Picture nominee. I hope it gets there because I loved it. Mary and Max was a really popular film I saw for the first time and liked it. Stop motion animation, kind of made for adults, kind of different, kind of unique, and also a little funny and kind of darkly funny at that. The Pianist, speaking of Holocaust movies that really make you feel, that's a good one. I don't care for its director, but the movie, I can't deny it, was excellent. Seth Meyers, he's a great talk show host, but I think he's an even better stand-up comedian, and this is a new one. It just came out a few months ago. I suggest you check it out because I thought it was hysterical. Some great picks I found in October, as you can see here, all from my Hooptober challenge. 31 horror movies in the month of October. Strange Darling, The Skin I Live In, Barbarian, Exorcist 3. Can't recommend those 4 enough. You've probably seen a couple of them. I'm late to the game on a lot of the horror movie. I'm not the one I go to straight when they're released, but I'll discover them over time. And Barbarian was one. Everyone had been talking about it for years. I finally saw it and was like, oh shoot, yeah, you guys are right. This movie was excellent. And Exorcist 3 with George C. Scott, I like that better than either of the previous Exorcist films. Rebel Ridge was a great Netflix original that came out in September. I would recommend that. Twisters, I reviewed it here on YouTube in a full main channel video, and I loved it. Glenn Powell has the sauce. I can't wait to see what he does next. Hoop Dreams, 3-hour basketball documentary from 1994. You've probably heard of it. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend you finally make the time for it. I loved it. La Haine is a great French film from 95 that I finally saw as well. Challengers, I kind of watched that, I think, as soon as it came out on digital, and it was great. It's one of my favorites of 2024, in fact. Fall Guy, same thing. Like, that was so fun. A great throwback to the 90s. Mark of Zorro, this is a 1940 version of that classic character, and I love all the Zorros from Douglas Fairbanks in the 20s up to Banderas in the 90s, and I know there's a new miniseries that came out in Spain like a year or two ago. I got to check that out because Zorro's great. He's Batman before Batman, right? He's a good character. Mildred Pierce, a great film. They also made it into a miniseries with Kate Winslet, so if they made it twice, you know it's good. Baby Reindeer was a, I want to say, Netflix miniseries. Hit a little too close to home because I've dealt with stalkers and that type of behavior before, but I can't deny it is a powerful and really thrilling TV show for sure. Babyface is an old 30s, pre-code mobster film that I really dug. Dream Scenario was an awards contender like a full year ago with Nicolas Cage. That kind of hit my wavelength. I liked it a lot. The Last Repair Shop is a short film about repairing musical instruments for a bunch of gifted school kids, and it's actually strangely beautiful. It's only like 20 minutes long. Check it out. Million Dollar Baby was the final Best Picture winner that I had not yet seen, and I finally watched it last March on the 8th, and it's awesome. Clint Eastwood, he's got it. This guy is a good director. Poor Things, that was another, I think, Best Picture nominee, certainly Best Actress nominee for Emma Stone, and I watched that in March, right before the Oscars last year, and it was great. Some other films I watched last spring that I gave a 9 out of 10, Persona, American Fiction, Thelma and Louise, first time seeing that, Raising Arizona, finally watched that. I loved them all. Floor and Sun, you might have missed this from 2023. If you have, go check it out. Society of the Snow, that was a Netflix one. I think a lot of people did see that. That one was pretty popular. Paper Moon, Proof of Life, Polite Society, and the first film I watched all of last year was a deep dive all the way to 1906. And I don't need to show you all the movies I scored an 8 or a 7 or whatever. You know what I can show you, though? Some of the movies I hated. So here are some of the films I gave my lowest rating to. Only 3 got a 1 out of 10. That was Chuck E. Cheese and the Galaxy 5000. I watched this with my kids. It's only like 40 minutes long, and they were both like, Daddy, turn it off. It's terrible. And I'm like, we have to press on. You need to understand this disappointment, child. You need to know what it's like to see something through that is bad. And it was. I don't even know why I was punishing them, because I was punishing myself, but whew, that is not a good film, but it would make a great, so bad, it's good time with your buddies, because it's hilariously bad. Cocaine Cougar, trying to cash in on Cocaine Bear in that sort of weird little subgenre we've created in the last few years. It's terrible. It is awful. And also really disappointing to see Leslie Nielsen in 2001: A Space Travesty. I like the movies that they're parodying. I get the references. It's just so vapid and uninspired, and avoid this one. And a lot of these in this group here, Rocket Attack, Ring of Terror, Wild Rebels, Lost, the Hellcats, these are all Mystery Science 3000 watches. I'm working my way through the second season of that show, and I try to review the films on their own merits, irrespective of the robot commentary. And the robots and Joel make the movie enjoyable, and they make it watchable, and I'm enjoying myself for 90 minutes. The movies themselves, if you were to remove their commentary, are terrible. They're just slow and quiet and like not interesting. Like nothing happens in half of these movies. They're very bad, very boring, and these are some of the worst movies I watched last year. Madam Web, I think, is one of the worst new releases I watched, and I did write a ton on it. Like I wrote 1,000. I was just bored one day. I'm like, I'm just going to write 2,000 words on Madam Web and why it's terrible. And to be fair, it's not terrible. A 3 out of 10. There's some things in there that are like halfway decent, but it also ranked lower than a Disney Channel original called Den Brothers. Like how good could it be? Let's go back to the main stats page for 2024. Now that we've seen some of my highest rated and lowest rated, I also, speaking of Madam Web, reviewed 84 other movies last year. So that's 760 hours. It's kind of right on line with where I've been the last few years. We'll scroll down and take a look at my highest rated films. We've talked about all these already, but if you look at what I'm watching per week, there's that 9 average, right? Some milestones for the year. We've already talked about The Merry Frolics, which was the first film I watched. I gave it a 9 out of 10. It was George Méliès. He always impresses me with that old silent stuff. Last film of the year, great one, Poseidon Adventure. But the stuff in between, for whatever reason, all my milestones landed on stuff that I didn't quite care for. Banks of the Nile, this is from 1911. It's okay. It's only like 8 minutes long. I was interested. It was sort of a curio, and it wasn't great. The Zone of Interest was a Best Picture nominee from last year. I watched it in March, and I didn't like it. It was actually my least favorite of the nominees last year. And I usually kind of jive with Holocaust-related material. The Pianist we talked about earlier, I really liked that. And Life is Beautiful, I loved that. This one, did not really do anything for me, unfortunately. Rocket Attack USA was definitely a Mystery Science 3000 watch. But I do rate the movie based on the movie, not based on how funny Joel and the robots are. The Big Bus, I want to signal this one out. Because if you like Airplane and you like parody movies of the 70s disaster genre like Earthquake, Towering Inferno, or Airport, The Big Bus is one I had not heard of until I watched it on a bus. I was going on a flight, I was going on a trip, and I had to take a bus to the airport that was over an hour long, and I thought, I'll watch The Big Bus on my bus trip. And it was fun. It's not as good as Airplane, but it is in that same exact vein. Very silly, very slapsticky, very fun. And it's just like a host of a revolving door of 70s actors. The Hollow Man 2, a disappointment, because I really love the Kevin Bacon original from 2000. And this one, with none of the returning cast, is not very good. Also not great, Jackpot. This was, I think, straight to Amazon or Hulu with Awkwafina and John Cena. It just wasn't great. The Raven, during my Hooptober spree in October, this actually was pretty good with Vincent Price. It takes an Edgar Allan Poe story and expands it to something pretty good, actually. After Sun, I wanted to connect with this so much more. People have been singing its praises since it came out in 2022, and I like Paul Mescal, and I thought this story was interesting, but it didn't affect me emotionally like I was hoping. And then another disappointment in my milestones here, number 450 on the year, was this Lindsay Lohan Christmas film that my wife and I watched just before Christmas, and it is not good. Ugh. Comedy, USA English, once again, my number one most watched genre, country, and language for like the 30th year in a row here. But let's dive into some of these other categories, right? I watched 11 films from France, or at least in French. Night and Fog, Last Year in Marienbad, Pierrot Le Fou, Le Cercle Rouge, the Paris Olympics. I mean, I got to give a shout out. I spent 2 weeks of my life watching the Olympics every single day. Under Paris, that was a shark movie in the Seine River. That was really fun. La Haine was a list of shame entry. I finally wanted to watch one of the more popular and highly rated films on the site. Like if I went to this, right, This is ranked number 17, the 17 highest rated film on the entire website. It's been seen by over 750,000 people, and I had not watched it till last year, and I finally did, and I was like, you know what, guys, you're right. Movie's kind of great. La Alante, Anatomy of a Fall, Orpheus, and some other ones here. And generally, French movies hit or miss with me. I usually like them, but I don't love them. But let's pop over to, say, like Australia. What movies did I watch from that country? Mary and Max, it's a great stop motion animated film from, what's his name? Who directed this one? Adam Elliott. I know he just has a new one coming out, or just came out, Memoirs of a Snail. This one was weird, sort of darkly comedic and a little depressing, but a little heartwarming at the same time. Talk to Me, Upgrade, Torque. These were all like so much fun. I would recommend all of them for very different reasons. Torque, if you love Fast and Furious, check it out. Talk to Me if you like good, scary, legitimately scary horror. And Upgrade if you like sort of a thinky sci-fi Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde vibe. Fall Guy, we mentioned that earlier. That was super. Late Night with the Devil was fun, but not as good as I think some people were calling it. One Life, I actually reviewed that here on this Movie Night channel exclusively. I didn't talk about it on the main channel. Same thing with Land of Bad as well. Under the themes and nanogenres, my number one most watched theme is crude humor and satire, which I don't know if that says more about me or more about the way that Letterboxd collects and categorizes these movies. But Harold Lloyd Speedy from 1928 is not what I would call crude. It's slapstick, silent vaudeville. Like it's, but Bad Santa, yes, very crude. And both movies I would recommend for different reasons. In terms of nanogenres, you can tell that I'm a dad of two girls. Animation, kids, silly, cartoon. And then this one. This is one I watched when they were in sleep. Villain, Bullets, Criminal, Bad Boys, Rebel Ridge, Roadhouse. Roadhouse was great. I don't know why I had never seen it until last March, but I did, and it was awesome. Beekeeper, also awesome. Those movies they speak my language. Just dumb, brute force men getting kicked in the face by other men, I'll be there every night. Going down to the breakdown section, these little graphs are nice to look at, right? Of the 480 films, 78 were brand new year of releases, and in the 18 days we're into 2025, I have since watched, I think, 11 or 12 more. So I'm at 90 so far. When I get to 100, that's my sort of benchmark for, okay, I have seen enough films to properly rate and rank my favorites of 2024. I usually do that in like February. Watches and rewatches, 76. About 16% were rewatches, which is right in line with where I've been the last few years. And watched versus reviewed, 85 of those 480 I have reviewed, and those are on Letterboxd right now for you to read if you'd like. Some are really long. I'll write 1,200 words. Other times I'll only write 120 words. I'll just write like a tweet or two, just like four or five sentences. But either way, if you want to hear my thoughts on those 85, check out my Letterboxd page and dive deep into those. And it is worth mentioning, just because I haven't reviewed the other 395 films yet doesn't mean I won't. I take notes for a lot of things, and when I have a free afternoon, I'll just write reviews for like 12 in a row. And I don't know I'll get to too many more, but some of the films I watched in this gray part of the pie, I will eventually review. My ratings curve for this year looks pretty healthy, actually, right? Right in the middle is where it spikes, 6 out of 10. Those are the most films I watched, and that makes sense. They're supposed to be in the middle. It's the average rating. Admittedly, I probably could have done a better job of going out of my way to watch more bad films, which I think have value. Even if they're not ironically enjoyable, I think watching a bad film can calibrate your perspective on what a good film does well. Because, oh, right, that is what good acting is, because this is bad acting. And you need that level set. You need to come and you need to be able to reevaluate what things are in relation to each other. If you only watch great films all the time, you don't appreciate them, I don't think, as much if you don't throw in like a really bad film like After We Collided or Food Fight. No surprise here, Sam Jackson once again in the top spot for most watched actors. And that's actually not thanks to Marvel, because I didn't watch any Marvel movies last year besides Deadpool and Wolverine. But he shows up, and I'll remove filters here, you can see all of them. Exorcist 3. In 1990, he was a nobody then. Nobody even knew his name then, but he shows up in that movie. And he's in The Man, and he's in Deep Blue Sea, and Garfield, and the other guys, and White Sands, and Hard 8, and Argyle. And yeah, he's in all those movies. I don't remember him in half of these, but he is, and he gets around. Judge Reinhold, he's in second place. God love him. And a big reason for that is we watched all 3 Santa Claus movies, my family and I watched all 4 Beverly Hills Cop movies. And there you go. Those are your 7 Judge Reinhold films, 6 of which I had already seen. Stanley Tucci, Kevin Bacon, M. Emmett Walsh. Great to see these faces in here. Frank Welker and Jim Cummings, those should have big asterisks. They do voice only, and just by virtue of the projects they pick, I'm going to end up watching a bunch of films that Jim is in because he does kids films. He's in a bunch of Disney films. And the same thing with Frank Welker. He does animal sounds in every project that's ever been made. This dude has an IMDb resume as long as a CVS receipt. The guy's been in everything. Most watched directors, a very familiar group here, right? Verhoeven, Ridley Scott, Cameron, Spielberg, Tilton Howard, Tony Scott, and Don Cossolari, who I don't recognize, but that explains it, right? He did all the first 4 Phantasm films, which again I mentioned I liked, but I didn't love, and he did the first 4 of those 5, which is why he tops my list for the most watched directors, even though even after watching those films, I still couldn't name him or pick him out of a lineup. James, what were the 3 I watched from Cameron this year? No, some good ones. Aliens and Terminator, those are some good films. And I also finally watched for the first time his debut film, which is a short film called Xenogenesis. And it's pretty good. Even when he was fresh out of college, this guy had the juice for sure. This section of Letterboxd stats page I really enjoy. Crew and studio, just names. And we looked at the directors above, and here's Don again. But some other interesting categories. Like David A. Macklin, here we go, cinematographer. He did 4 movies that I watched last year, and interestingly, 3 of them are Disney Channel originals, Camp Rock, Den Brother, and Princess Protection Program. So like this guy, he kind of, he's a working cinematographer. He gets to lens all the DCOMs from the 2010s era. Good for him. We can also go to lighting and check out the 2 films that Ken Edwards did. That's interesting. He lights for CGI movies. I would have thought lighting meant traditional, but lighting can also mean CG. So that's cool. I didn't know that, and now I do. Title design. Matt Curtis did 10 of the films I watched last year, and it looks like they're all pretty recent. This guy keeps busy, right? Like he did titles for Civil War, Challengers, and Wonka, and Wolves, and Conclave. Good for you, Matt Curtis. You're getting it done. Appreciate the hustle. And we could pop around and look at any one of these things. And I like, look at this. Dan O'Connell, 14 movies he did sound design on. And look at some of these. Pearl Harbor, incredible work. The A-Team, Dune Part 2, that alone, I probably got him an Oscar nomination. That movie was mixed incredibly well. Actually, it hasn't got him an Oscar nomination because they haven't been announced yet. But coming up soon, maybe. Keep an eye out. What was his name? Dan O'Connell. We have Dons and Davids and Dan. I'm getting them mixed up. Deja Vu, this is a Tony Scott film with Denzel from 2006 about time travel, murder mystery. I love this film. I've seen this 3 or 4 times. Super underrated. I wrote a long review on it, and you should go and read it and check it out because I may do a video on it someday if I can kind of find some other movies to pair it up with. And here, Catherine Blondell did hairstyling on 5 movies I watched. How to Lose a Guy, Serial Mom, Peggy. Look at this. She did hairstyling for Goldie Hawn in 1980. And then 30 years later, or 23 years later, she was able to do her daughter's hair, Kate Hudson, in How to Lose It. And she's still around doing Leonardo DiCaprio in 2023. That is a long and illustrious career. Good for you, Catherine Blondell, doing the whole Hudson family and Oscar-nominated Netflix films. That's incredible. Good for you. Studios, this is interesting, right? To kind of see, you forget when you're watching which studio did which film, but Warner Brothers taking the top spot there with 29 films that I watched last year. My most liked review was for Deadpool and Wolverine. That makes sense. It's a very popular film, and I reviewed it the day it came out with 1,200 words. Also did a video on my main YouTube channel. And my most liked list also makes sense because I did a video promoting it here on this channel, my Hooptober 2024 with 27 likes. And now the highs and lows of the year. Fittingly, my highest high and low was High and Low from Kurosawa from 1963. Loved that film. Definitely want to recommend it if you haven't seen it already because, again, it is the 5th highest rated film on the entire Letterboxd site, and that is worth checking out. Lowest average, this was a movie I also did not like, and neither did the Letterboxd community, 1.5 from Madam Web. Most popular, not the first Dune, but you know what I mean, the 2021 Dune. Most obscure was like a 45-minute documentary I watched on Nat Geo about Yellowstone. Only like 30 people have logged this, but I had 45 minutes to kill it, put it on. Mufasa, watched that with the family in the theater, and it was okay. I gave it a 5 out of 10. And then the oldest movie was also my shortest. It's an old one from 1904 called The Mermaid. And yeah, it was all right. And the longest was Frank Herbert's Dune miniseries. I watched all 5 hours of that to review it on YouTube, and that was great. I enjoyed that. What did I give it? I gave it a 6 out of 10. Yeah, it was enjoyable. Films watched in 2024, going from the most recent to the oldest. So New Year's Eve here, and then you can tell where Christmas is, right? Die Hard, Christmas Carol, Better Watch Santa. Like just a lot of red, a lot of greens and sweaters. Bad Santa, Family Stone. And as we keep scrolling, you'll see these movie posters gradually shift into horror, and you see a lot of oranges and reds and bloods and knives and chainsaw hands, etc. And this list goes back and back and back until it tells you can't anymore. It taps out at 40 Days and 40 Nights, which if I had to guess, I probably watched that at the end of July or August. And yeah, right there, August 2nd. If you want to see what I watched before August 2nd, well, I can show you that in just a minute. Here's my world map. Predominantly American, 80% of what I watch is from this side of the pond. But I do 40 films from France. I do try to watch foreign films. I could dramatically shift this and watch only foreign films this year, but I'll be honest, I don't want to do that. I like the movies I watch. That's why I put them on. And that's the bottom of this page, right? Highest rated films you've yet to see. We mentioned Memoir of a Snail. I'm Still Here. I know that one's on my list. I have not heard of this, Vanya, but that seems like it's a stage play that's just been videotaped. How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies. That you have my attention with that title. I had heard of it. I will make sure to make room for it. Stats by Letterboxd, thank you very much. But of course, sometimes the stats by Letterboxd fail us, and they don't go the full Monty, and we need a little bit more, which is why I keep track of everything in parallel on a Google Sheet, something I have been doing privately and off-site for 20 years now. This is the 20th year I've been logging movies regularly, or every movie I watch, I log. And before we go, I want to slowly scroll through every single movie I watched in 2024 so you can see the entire list all at once. And some quick explanation on the color coding as it scrolls past you here. Yellow are movies I'm rewatching. Blue are films I'm seeing in theaters, and darker versions of either are films I'm watching away from home. And the orange in the F column represents films that are older than 1980. So anything in orange or dark brown is like what I would call an older film. And the pink color there represents movies I watched with commentary, usually Mystery Science Theater, or sometimes I'll watch a film with director's commentary. Admittedly, I don't do that as much anymore, so most of the pink I think are just MST3K episodes. And that big chunk of gray in May and June is when I went on my road trip through the Southwest, and you'll see all the new releases I saw in blue during the summer, and lots of great films here. And you can see the rating there in column G if you haven't clocked it already. Color-coded as well. The reds stand out and the dark green stand out when I really love a film. But generally, this is a pretty good year for cinema. I am happy with what I watched. I'm happy that I was able to get to 480. I did not, break my back trying to watch that many. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. And thank you very much for sticking with me. Appreciate your time very much. I will see you right back here in the next week or so as I walk you through my most anticipated films of 2025. And then in 2 weeks, I think we'll probably talk about the Oscar nominations, what I think about them, what I think has a chance to win. And I'll see you then for that. Thank you very much for joining me. My name is Jonathan, and I hope you have a great movie night.